in the Rambam's book of Jewish law, in the beginning, he has Yisodei HaTorah, foundations of Jewish law. So we just saw that in the laws of repentance, he doesn't mention bodily resurrection. He mentions the time of the Messiah, but he's very clear at the time of the Messiah. He does not mention the resurrection of the dead in conjunction with the time of the Messiah. He's very clear at the time of the Messiah is a natural process, not a supernatural process, in which the Jewish people will have sovereignty and they will have the luxury to study Torah and to engage in commandments because they'll have enough physical things that they'll be able to do that. And then the Rambam in earlier in the Mishnah Torah, earlier in his book of law, in the foundations of the Torah, Yisodei HaTorah, which is about basic elements of belief, which is what he begins his book with. He talks a little bit about the science of the time, talks about the four elements, which is water, air, wind, and fire, and how these things make up the things in the world. And that they can. It sounds like there's a they don't get erased from the world, but they can change form. And then he says the olam ein atarai roe golam below tzura, and he says, and this is again medieval science. He says you don't see a something made out of matter without form, and you don't see form without matter. Ela lev ha'adam hu shemachalik guf hanimtza b'dato v'yodea shu mechubar migolim b'tzura. But rather, we understand the idea that there's matter and form. V'yodea sheyesh sham gufim shegomam mechubar me'arvi yisodos. And he says we understand that there are bodies whose matter is made up from these four elements. Gufim shegomam pashut ve'ein mechub migolam acher. And we also understand that there are bodies, I guess, things that are made up of simple matter, contain only one type, not different four types. And you'll see why it's relevant soon. But tzuras she'ein lahem golam, and form without matter, einam nira la'ayin. You can't see that. Ela be'ein halev ein ha'yidua. Only we can understand it philosophically. K'mosh yadanu adon hakol b'lo riyas ayin. And God is the one who can see things we can't see, right? For us, maybe it's a little bit like how, everything is both a wave and a particle, even though that's a contradiction in terms. We can talk about it philosophically, we can understand it in terms of physics, and we can do the math, but we can't imagine what that means for something to be both a particle of existence and a wave in a only a wave in a medium and which we don't know what that medium is. It doesn't actually seem to be a medium that it's a wave in, right? And these idea that there are contradictory things that we cannot see but we can conceive of on some level, and that that God understands that. So the Rambam has different terms. Obviously the Rambam didn't know our physics, but the idea that there's things that we understand to be true and to be the things that structure the universe, even though we can't see them and grasp them physically, we can't understand them concretely, but we can understand them philosophically. So that's what Rambam's going to say, and this is going to tie into his idea of soul and body. This is nefesh kol basar hitzurato. The soul of all flesh is its tzura, is its form. In other words, what he's saying, what we mean by body and soul is form and matter. The matter is the body, the form is the soul. Shenatan lo hakel, it's what God gave us. Va'adat hayetera hamatziya benafsho, and intellect that seems to be the product, comes from a body. This is the form of the human being who is perfect in knowledge. As the more perfect in knowledge you are, the more knowledge you have, the more your soulness kind of is enhanced because for the Rambam, knowledge and soul, consciousness and soul are connected, and it's what right, the body is a body, but existence can only be there when there's also a form. And that's a little hard to understand. If you Google sort of Aristotle and forms and matter, it'll clarify a little bit. V'al ne'amar b'Torah na'aseh adam b'tzalmenu kidmutenu. This is what it says in the Torah: we shall make the human being in our image as our likeness. Klomer, that means to say, tilo tzura hayodaat umaseget hadeyot. Human being will have a form which can grasp and understand knowledge. Shein lahem golem k'mo hamalachim. They don't have a we're not like angels who have a tsura without a form without matter. Ad sheyid melahem, until we resemble them. What he means until you, I think what he means is that through intellect we can come to resemble the angel because it can accentuate our form and not our matterness. By the way, this is actually a problem in modern philosophy also. There's an enormous argument today in philosophy about consciousness. Is consciousness just a product of our physical mind, or is it something fundamentally different? In other words, you have the brain, which is matter. It's just nerves, and yet there seems to be this sense of consciousness that the human being has. So is that just the product of a lot of complexity, or no? It's actually something different. It's just an infinite amount of nerve connections doesn't create consciousness. So that's a very big argument. You can read a guy named Chalmers who's written a lot about this topic. He's a philosopher from Australia. I remember his first name, Jeffrey. It's a tremendous argument in philosophy. So it's not dissimilar with what I'm saying. In other words, the fundamental ideas really have not changed, since, as Bertrand Russell said, since Plato, nobody's asking new question in philosophy. Don't say about this surah, this form which we see, don't say it's the mouth, and because our physical image is not what we mean by image. And the soul is not the body. Knowledge is the form of the soul. And that's what, when the Torah says, let's make the human being in our image, it's talking about the soul. In other words, the human being is different from the animal in that the human being has intellect. For the Rambam, you can see there's a conflation of soul and intellect. And that form is called nefesh and ruach, those are parts of the soul. We should be careful with the words that we're using, so don't make a mistake. Okay. So this is important sort of as an introduction to how the Rambam sees the soul, and therefore that's going to have repercussions. So we'll do paragraph 9, 10. We'll do to the end of this chapter a few paragraphs. And you'll see how the Rambam understands the soul and how that relates to ultimately to the reward being in the world of souls. I know it's a little bit, these are sort of medieval philosophical ideas, it's a little confusing, but it's important to see this because we'll see why the Rambam thinks that reward, in a bodily way would not mean anything. Because reward in a soul way is a natural product of living in a certain way. Okay, we'll continue this tomorrow.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.